Hello and welcome to The Print. If you're somebody who likes to listen to old Bollywood songs on Sundays and it makes your Sunday, then I think you should definitely watch this interesting conversation that I'm about to have with Seher Zaman, who's written Talat Mahmood's biography, which is called The Definitive Biography. And for those who don't know Talat Mahmood, I don't think that can happen because if you have not heard of him, you have definitely heard of his music, of his songs. He was a Ghazal king, and he was also known as Tragedy King simply because that is a title that eventually came to Dilip Kumar. And Talat Mahmood was the voice of Dilip Kumar in any song that was about heartbreak. Even though today heartbreak may have become very, very different from what it was earlier, there was a whole era when heartbreak meant you would listen to Talat Mahmood songs. And this is the 100th year, centenary year of this wonderful, iconic singer. And we are here to talk to his grandniece who's written his biography so that she can tell us amazing stories about the singer. Welcome, Sir.
Thank you so much, Tina.
Actually, let's start with some of the most iconic songs that he sang.
Okay.
And since Devdas is something that a lot of us are aware of because there have been so many movie
many,
renditions
yes,
of
so
it.
many versions.
But let's talk about the movie rendition in the 1950s, which had Dilip Kumar playing Devdas and his, broken-hearted song Mitwa. So let's start
Which
with
was
that.
the thrust of his tragedy king
Yes.
phase. Yeah. So yes, this is one of the first songs that comes to mind. And this also further sealed the Dilip Talat partnership, and where it is said that he was the voice of the tragedy king, and it was difficult to separate the two. And even their speaking voices were very similar. So when he sang for Devdas, and especially when he sang the song Mitwa, Talat Mahmood said that one of the biggest compliments given to him was that many people came to him and said that they didn't realize that he is singing because it felt and sounded so much like Dilip Kumar, and the pain that he was feeling, and it kind of completely was in sync with the tragedy that you could see on Dilip Kumar's face. The same was felt in his voice as well. But I think personal circumstances also played a role in that because this was around the same time when Talat Mahmood himself lost his father, and he had gone to Lucknow for the last rites and settled things there and come back, and the studio was waiting for him to come back, and that grief of losing his father was very raw when he recorded songs for Devdas, and when he recorded Mitwa. He wanted to be completely left alone in the room when he was singing. So that is why I think you feel that raw pain, part of his personal loss, which also gets translated to the pain of the character of Devdas, so.
What is your personal favorite? I'm sure it's difficult to pick one.
Yeah, there's so many.
Yeah, but is anything that comes to mind in terms of the story behind it that you would pick, which must have surprised you probably when you'd come to know about it?
Well, I'll speak with respect to his fans and music lovers because most of them come to me and say that their personal favorite is Jalte Hain Jiske Liye, which is also,
Right.
of course, on my list as well, most certainly. It was also his personal favorite, and it ended up being a personal favorite of music composer S.D. Burman as well. He gave the music to this, and as the story goes, that it was it took a lot of thought and contemplation to decide कि कौन ये गाना गाएगा, and one version also is that S.D. Burman decided that the softness, of course, the softness of that moment, that Sunil Dutt is singing into the phone to Nutan and trying to console her that, caste barriers don't matter as far as love is concerned and we belong together. And so that consoling and persuasion of a lover, that softness could come in from Talat's voice. And also how caressing, which voice or whose voice could sound the best caressing voice over phone. So
Right.
that's one of the reasons, as one says, was the deciding factor. And of course, there were layers of emotions in the song. Okay? At one point, he's smiling away, Sunil Dutt, and singing that this is the love that we belong to. And on the other side, Nutan is gradually letting go of those emotions and bursting into tears, and then through the music it reaches this tempo where the pitch goes high and it's part tragedy, part happiness of love. So I think at that time the entire team which was involved in this song, चाहे वो lyricist Majrooh Sultanpuri हो या singer Talat Mahmood या SD Burman हो, they knew right from the start that this song is a winner, you know, and that was also his one and only Filmfare nomination for Talat Mahmood. And when the recording got over, Majrooh Sultanpuri, the lyricist, told Talat Mahmood, "Wah Talat, kya gaya hai?" So he says, "Wah Janab, kya likha hai?" So that's a beautiful interaction and a very, very important insight on the deep respect that they had for each other's art, for each other's skill.
So this was also the time, I mean, if for those of you who've not heard this song, I think you should just right now go and listen to it, because, you know, we may have, this generation may have its own brand of heartbreak and romance songs, but, you know, when it came out, Jalte Hai Jiske Liye, that was the song for that generation, for people in love. And
At
you have to
least 2
understand,
generations.
at least, yeah, at least, if not one.
Yeah.
And also because remember, this is the time when you do not have, you know, mobile. If you are in love with somebody who's not right next to you, you'd be writing letters. So there's pain of the separation. There's also the society where love marriage is not really the most accepted notion.
Yeah.
So there's a song that encapsulates a lot of things together, and
Right.
like Seher has already pointed out.
If I could add into a
Right.
very interesting reaction that I got from a youngster, because a few years back, about 5-6 years back, I started this concert series dedicated to his music and films. So it was called Jashn-e-Talat, you know, a celebration of Talat. So in which I had singing competitions with college students where they only sang his songs. Then I had dance competitions where youngsters did modern dance to his peppy numbers.
Right.
So one of the students who was a contestant in that singing competition, she sang Jalte Hain Jiske Liye. और फिर जब competitions हो गए, फिर हमने behind the scenes उनके reaction लिए कि because for the first time Talat Mahmood entered their playlist.
Right.
They knew कि है एक नाम, है एक singer, पापा का, मम्मी का, नानी का, दादी का, but they never really tried it. The first time it came, his name came on their playlist. So this girl tells me, and she was in second year college at that time, bachelor, she says, I have never experienced such depth. And she was talking about Jalte Hain Jiske Liye because that's the song she sang. And she said, I've never experienced such depth in voice or in lyrics. और मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि बस मैं एक पेड़ के नीचे बैठी रहूं और सुनती रहूं. So I thought to myself, that was the moment I thought that these are artists who travel time, I mean, whose skill travels through generations and time. You know, it's just a question of reintroducing. Yeah.
So what you just said, I think I'll take on from there, that his peppy numbers, because again, we think of him, and I think for a lot of us, because Jalte Diye and Mitwa come like first, we also start associating him with just this sort of like a heartbreak, you know, very sad. So let's talk about a peppy number and a story about that.
Okay, so this is Devanand's song. And it's called तुम तो दिल के तार छेड़ कर. तुम तो दिल के तार छेड़ कर हो गए बेखबर. So it's a peppy number because it starts with a trumpet and drums, and you know, and it's Devanand's personality and being very lively. And Devanand had once said, this is just one small behind the scenes story. He said that, you know, Talat sings with so much passion in everything, and his diction and Urdu, there's so much tamiz in his language, the way he says the words, the way he sings the words, उसमें इतनी तमीज़ झलकती है कि मुझे भी सीधा होके गाना पड़ता है. मैं भी अपने mannerisms थोड़े control कर लेता हूँ कि कुछ ज़्यादा over ना हो जाए. So that's behind the scenes story of the peppy number you want.
And also he sang with Lata quite a lot.
Of course.
And of course that was also a jodi in that sense at that time, which was very hit. So tell us a song that they have sung together, and the one I think we were having a conversation about where Lata had to sing a song.
Oh yes, she fought to have it as a duet. So this is Anil Biswas ji's music composition. Anil Biswas ji was someone who Talat Mahmood mentions in his life very often as his godfather, because when he was shifting from the Calcutta film industry to Bombay, post-independence. Suddenly, Bombay music directors had a problem with his vibrato, with the vibration in his voice, and he suddenly got very conscious. But it was Anil Biswas who convinced him that this is your USP, so don't look at it negatively. I'll make sure to accentuate it. So in that sense, he always says he was my godfather. You know, he used to say कि आसमां पे है खुदा और ज़मीं पे अनिल दा. So this duet that you're mentioning with Lata Didi is called Seene Mein Sulagte Hain Armaan, from the film Tarana. And it's beautiful. Again, it's a heartbreak song, and it's about two lovers, Dilip Kumar and Madhubala, separated. And it was essentially only meant to be for Dilip Kumar. It was a solo song. But when Lata Mangeshkar ji heard it, she said कि अनिल जी ये तो आपको मुझे देना पड़ेगा, ये मैं नहीं छोड़ सकती. तो तलत नारा used to say कि उसने ज़बरदस्ती duet उसको बनाया. And I heard this in one of his live concerts when I was researching for the book. So he says that he tells his audience, when he sang the song Seene Mein Sulagte Hain Armaan, he tells his audience, you know, ये पहले एक solo था और लता ने इसको ज़बरदस्ती duet बनाया. I mean, he was obviously jokingly saying it.
Of course.
It was light-hearted to get the audience mood up. So he said, लता ने ज़बरदस्ती इसको duet बनाया, मगर मैं अब अपने concerts में solo गाता हूँ, so I get my revenge.
There's something that I also know that when he was performing shows abroad, he was introduced as a Frank Sinatra of India.
Yes.
So what was that one song that definitely the audience there would want to hear from him? Like no matter what happened till the right end, what was that one song that they definitely clamored for?
So this was interestingly a song which was the part of the beginning of his career in the 1940s. And through his career of the 50s and 60s and then in the 70s and later on in concert tours, he said there was an inexhaustible demand for that song. And it was not a filmy song. It was part of one of his repertoire of the non-film ghazals.
Okay.
So it's called Tasveer Teri Dil Mera Behla Na Sakegi. Ye Teri Tarah Mujhse Sharma Na Sakegi. What good is your photograph compared to you, who could, you know, be shy and be blush away on things. So and at that time when it released in 1944, it was an unprecedented record breaking single, because उस वक्त जो 1944 में जो एक hit single का yardstick था, it was about 300 copies sold. That was the yardstick. And Tasveer Teri sold 1 lakh copies. So it went beyond anything one had heard of. And through his career, I mean his career of 40-50, active singing career of 40-50 years, it continued to be that top of the list. And it was not even part of his filmy career. It was part of his non-film ghazal. That could never be missed. Yeah.
So coming back to the journey that he had from, Calcutta to Bombay.
Yes.
He also sang a lot in Bengali. But there's a story, which is why I'm asking Sarah this question. And she'll tell us why he used to sing under a very different name.
Yes.
And so let's hear from her actually.
So these are very early times of what we're talking about, the early 1940s, the mid 1940s, then independence onwards. And our music industry, our film industry headed towards independence. So our music and film industry was also finding its feet. These are those early times. और कई लोग industry में आते थे family के blessings के बिना, you know, that it's not considered good. And he had his own story as well, where he had to put his foot down and leave his father's home and come. तो नाम बदल के लोग आते थे, you know. But in this case, it's interesting, he was always singing in the name of Talat Mahmood, but that was as far as his Urdu ghazals are concerned. Right. So when he started his career, and at that time, for reference to your viewers, the music and film industry hub used to be Calcutta. It's only after independence that it shifted to Bombay. So obviously from Lucknow, he had to go to Calcutta to start his career. So he recorded one of his Urdu ghazals, और recording studio में पंकज मलिक बैठे थे. Pankaj Malik, the great doyen of the niche stages of our music industry. He was one of the members of the New Theatres as well, which was one of our first massively hit production house, just underneath the banner of which you had Kannan Devi and KL Saigal sing and act. It was like the YRF of those days, you know, the New Theatres. So Pankaj Malik heard him and recorded this ghazal, Tasveer Teri. He recorded it. He was part producer. And he said, तुम्हारी उर्दू गज़ल तो बहुत हिट हो गई, अब तुम स्टार बन गए, बट आवाज़ ऐसी है जो बंगाली में भी अच्छी लगेगी, तो तुम बंगाली गाओ. सो तलत नाना सेड, पंकज साहब ये कैसे हो सकता है, ये मतलब कैसे नहीं हो सकता, बट ये थोड़ी मुझे घबराहट हो रही है इस बात की, क्योंकि मेरी लाइफ की प्रिपरेशन इनटू उर्दू लिटरेचर, उर्दू पोइट्री एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट है, उर्दू का एहसास एक है. सो आई वुड लाइक टू डू इट, बट यू थिंक इट विल बी फाइन, क्या कैसे प्रोनाउंसिएशन हैंडल करेंगे? ही सेड नहीं, हमारे म्यूजिक डायरेक्टर हैं कमल दास गुप्ता, वो तुमको संभालेंगे, सारा प्रोनाउंसिएशन तुम्हारा संभालेंगे, डोंट बी वरिड. और तलत महमूद तो अजीब सा नाम लगता है कि तलत महमूद कौन है जो बंगाली गा रहा है, तो तुम तपन कुमार बनो. सो तपन कुमार वाज अ नेम गिवन टू हिम बाय पंकज मलिक. And then to date, people are so convinced, for those who don't know this story,
Right.
are convinced that Tapan Kumar was a Bengali boy. And there's this, I must share this with you. There's this incident that I share in the book as well, that when I started off my career as a journalist in the newsroom, and this colleague of mine was singing a song, and it was Bengali, and I said, yeah, are you singing Tapan Kumar's? He said, yeah, how do you know? I said, I've heard some of his music. And I started talking about my relationship with him only when 20 years into my career, when I started his concert series. I never spoke about it, so many of my friends and colleagues never knew. And so he said, yeah, he was such a great Bengali legend, and this belonging to Calcutta. And I said, yeah, he just sounds very, very perfect in Bengali, but I'm sorry, I must tell you that he was a Lucknow boy. He belonged to Lucknow, born and brought up into Urdu, Shairi and everything. ये नहीं हो सकता. I said, bhai, I insist. No, but you are no authority on him. So I said, I just had to disclose. I said, he's family, so I know everything about his genealogy and family and everything. So, I mean, it's just an example to show that to that extent, he perfected Bengali, that people thought he's a Bengali boy.
So since you've talked about, researching so much about his work, so tell us a bit about your memory of him, because he used to live more in Bombay, and you were born and brought up in Lucknow. Delhi, sorry.
Yeah.
And so how did it, how did that relationship for you blossom, and when was the time that you decided that, a book needed to be written, and with these kind of stories, which are not just about, of course, this person who made a career back when probably this was not even thought of as a career, but also he, if I remember correctly, he was also very instrumental in introducing and supporting very new voices in the music industry that we know today, and they are iconic on their own now. But he was very instrumental in not just establishing himself, but also providing the space for these new talents.
Right. I used to go meet him in my summer holidays. A lot of about him, of course, I heard a lot of stories from my mom, because she was very close to him as his maternal uncle, and my mom was brought up in Bombay, so her whole childhood was spent with him as her maternal uncle. But we used to go to his home in Bombay for our summer break, our summer holidays. So well, it's like you have this cute gramps at home, who's making sure you've had ice cream in the summer, and if you've had your favorite dish, and if his son Khalid Mahmood has taken you around to your favorite spots and sightseeing in Bombay. So that was what my relationship with him was about. And he would squint his eyes and wink at me and smile and laugh, and he had a very crazy sense of humor in that sense. And most of my memories, of course, are at a very personal level. Much later in life, in my, I think, middle childhood and late teens, when one got to realize what a great legend he's been. But my biggest regret in life is that I never got to speak to him as a journalist, when he passed away, I had just finished school and started first year college. I never had that kind of an interaction where I would revisit his career and study it and then ask him about it. That never happened, of course. These were all things that you do with your granddad and an old cute relative at home. So those were the sweet memories that I have with him. Yeah. And to answer the second part of your question on, how this came to me, I think the seed of the book subconsciously was when I started the tribute series in 2017 onwards, I kind of rolled out the concert series, the tribute series, and that also came to me as a very personal story. You know, I was a new mother at that time. My child was just born, and he had fever, and I was leaving him behind to go for my debates and bulletins and studio bookings, and I felt very rotten. I didn't want to go to work. So I was driving down to my studio, and I put on the radio, and he was singing Sham-e Gham Ki Qasam. And you know, this quality of his voice that everyone talks about, which is, it's soft, it's soothing, it's like a balm that caresses you. And I was feeling terrible in my heart leaving my son with fever, and he was there as if he's personally singing to me and saying, it's okay, you know, be calm, be easy. And at that moment, I felt that I feel so grateful. I want to give back to his legacy. So I started the concert series. And in those concert series, I realized there's so many pioneering things about his life that can't fit in a 2-hour, 3-hour concert. And in 2022, I thought about writing this book. And as a journalist, I kept timing in mind that I should manage in 2 years because 2024 is his centenary. So it's a must that I bring out his story, not just about his music, about his voice, but I bring out his life story in his centenary year to celebrate it, because it was so iconic. Yeah.
So coming back, this is something that still happens. The fight for credit, especially if you are a writer, I think has been a long battle. And how long has it been? And when did people start fighting? Is something that Talat Mahmood probably was one of the pioneers who was talking about this. Because see, today, you know, every time you listen to a song, you'll find that line, right? That none of this can be reproduced without permission. You know, it has become very normal for us.
Right.
But back when he was singing, it was a very different era. It was a very different world. Sometimes people would not even get credit for the song they have written or they have sung. So,
or even the 78 RPM or the LP would not even have the singer's song.
Yeah.
Often.
So this was a time when the talk about credit started. It was started by Talat Mahmood. It was a whole movement. So tell us a bit about that, because a lot of prominent people joined this movement as well.
So, well, essentially one must mention Lata Mangeshkar ji. She made a mention of it first, but it was more at an individual level that she made a mention of it and started talking about it for her own songs. But when Talat Nana took the chair as the secretary of the Playback Singers Association, उस time पे ये group बना था film singers का, Playback Singers Association. So as the secretary of that association, he decided to make it a more official fight, you know. So he brought in his friends. I mean, Lata Di was already on board for this cause. Then Mukesh ji joined in. Then other singers joined in. Much later in the stage, Mohammad Rafi Saab, Asha Tai also joined in. So it was the first impact of that demand, because what happened was they were in talks with music labels and film producers on the nitty-gritties of how to bring about the royalty rights for the singers. So there was a 3 months protest in the film industry. This is in the early 1960s. And this 3 months protest, like, you know, we have pen down protests. So I call it the mic down protest, because for 3 months, studios were shut. Singers did not record any song for 3 months. And that is a huge blow to the film industry, you know, if recordings are not happening. So for 3 months, the protests continued. And of course, there's another story that few singers left saying, कि इसका अब कोई फायदा नहीं, हमारा ही नुकसान हो रहा है, let's just forget it and move on. So the protest broke. But I feel as a first earth-shattering step that was taken was through this. Yeah.
So you mentioned Mohammad Rafi. Yes. So let's come to these two iconic singers in their own right, who were also singing around the same time.
Yes.
And they also, I mean, whether or not we now, when we use the term rivalry, हमें से बड़ा negative connotation देते हैं. But rivalry can actually be something that can push each other to be better. So tell us a bit about this professional rivalry that was there between these two very, very crucial singers of that era.
See, professional rivalries in the sense that there was, you know, what I realized about the golden era is that there was such, and in today's time, it feels like unthinkable respect for each other.
Right.
क्योंकि वो एक दूसरे को काटते नहीं थे. वो समझते थे कि if you are better in one style, a song deserves better to you than, than me having sing it. But I think that comes because they were all part of India going through the independence movement. So I think somewhere subconsciously they felt collectively that we're doing this for the country in establishing our music industry of independent India. So rivalry in the sense, I would say that there were some songs that he recorded which were delayed in the release. But then, and when the time of the film release came, they were later given to Mohammad Rafi Saab's voice. So the final release of the film was in his voice, whereas Talat Mahmood had recorded them first. So this happened in a few instances. But I want to give in a personal incident that happened with him when Mohammad Rafi Saab passed away.
Right.
So, and I share that photograph in the book as well, that Talat Mahmood is bending down and kissing Mohammad Rafi Saab's forehead while he's lying with his mortal remains. He's bending down and kissing his forehead, saying that the world deserved a longer life for a singer like Mohammad Rafi than me. So death should have come to me first before him. So that was the kind of personal connect that each of them had. But I still won't call it professional rivalry because, the singers did not orchestrate cutting each other. It happened with either the music director changing his mind or the film producer insisting on another voice. But it didn't happen with the singers as such,
Right. Yeah, but like I said, that when we hear competition, aaj ke date pe, I think automatically we assume that it's cut short. It cannot be anything but that. But I think, and I don't know, probably this is how it has become that when we see two actors, like, even till recently, we would say ki two female actors, how can they just be friends?
How can they get along?
It still baffles people. So I think it's similar. I think, but you can exist in the same space and have great friendship, even if, let's say, work-wise, it has not been the best.
So and I think sometimes artists have the capability of rising above that, which non-creative people would not understand. Like in another instance, as far as friendship and feeling for each other is concerned, there's this incident where the film Madhumati was to be released, and this was Dilip Kumar's film, Dilip Kumar Vijayanti Mala, and of course, if it's Dilip Kumar, it has to be Talat Mahmood. So this was Bimal Roy's film Madhumati, and he was given to sing the entire album, all the songs of the film. But his friend Mukesh was undergoing a very tough time in life because, an artist's career always fluctuates. Sometimes you're getting a lot, sometimes you're completely rock bottom. It's never stable. It always fluctuates. So every artist understands that fluctuation. So he sat down with Bimal Roy and Dilip Kumar and said कि मुकेश का भी बहुत बुरा वक्त चल रहा है, मुझे पता है कि बहुत उनकी सिचुएशन टाइट है, आप इसमें सिर्फ इस फिल्म का एक गाना नहीं, मैं समझता हूँ आप सारे गाने इनको दे दीजिए, उनको ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है. So a film that was coming to him entirely as Madhumati was handed over to Mukesh to help him, and this was not an incident he ever spoke about in public in his life. We knew it inside as a family. It got verified very recently, I think 5-7 years ago when they were celebrating 50 years of Madhumati.
Okay.
And Bimal Roy's daughter spoke about it when she released a book on 50 years of Madhumati. She spoke about this incident. So since she had already spoken about it in public, so I thought I should also put it in my book then. This was just something that helped give an insight into what an artist's mind is in those days, who understands fluctuations in each other's life. Yeah.
So I actually want to end this conversation specifically because I found out a very interesting fact from Sarah just before we started this interview, that not just Bengali, he sang this very famous Assamese song. Talat Mahmood sang this very famous Assamese song, which I have heard, but then again, since it was a song recorded in 1964, around that year, at least the film came out around that year, so I'm assuming probably a year or so before. Lian Macau is a very, very iconic song because it comes from this movie called Pratidhwani, which was directed by Dr. Bhupen Hazarika, and he was much younger. If you listen to the song, for me as well, for a minute there, I could not understand it was Hazarika because his voice, as I have heard, has been much different, was much deeper. But this is a song with this very wonderful video that I found on YouTube when both of them are really, really young and, dressed probably in white shirts, or we don't know, it's a black and white photo. And it's a very conversational song. So, the imprint that he had clearly went across language. It was not just restricted. So, if you had to say anything about that aspect? Yeah, this aspect.
Well, he had a very strong presence in regional songs, you know.
Right.
I mean, he had a full-fledged career in Bengali songs as Tapan Kumar. But even when he shifted to Bombay and had a complete career in the Hindi film industry, he continued with his Bengali songs. He sang Gujarati songs, he sang Telugu songs. Like, I was very fortunate to get in touch with P. Sushila. She's a iconic singer of South India. She's known as the Nightingale of South India. And she's right now about 92, 93 years old. And I felt very, very fortunate to have a chance to speak with her. And she said that, you know, Telugu is one of the most difficult languages that you have in India.
Right.
But when Talat was practicing with me and when we recorded the song, and if you hear the final recording, he sounds like a local speaker. You can't say that he's a non-Telugu speaking person. So same in case of Assamese as well. He sang Punjabi, he sang Malayalam as well. In the 1970s, he has one of the top hit songs, which is in Malayalam.
Okay.
And this duet that he has with Bhupin Hazarika ji is very interesting because, you know, you have two icons belonging to different parts of the country.
Right.
And it was a great surprise, which was part of my research. So I'm sure you understand that song better and the story behind and the essence behind that. But he was quite a multilingual as far as singing. He sang in 16 languages. So I think his stint in Bengali made him confident about doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we may talk about pan-India, you know, terms like pan-India, because we suddenly think that, oh, you know, actors from one language or a
Yes.
singer from a language. But
Right.
this was not new. This was already happening.
Right.
In fact, probably it was happening more because I also know there were singers like even Udit Narayan who sang a lot of Assamese song when I was like a
Wow.
teenager. Yes. So, but yes, I think again for me, I think this was interesting because I used to also think this would only happen in the so-called modern times. I think we have this association somehow
Yeah.
that, you know, older generation would, you know, restrict to one
know.
language.
So, but the experiments that he did were very interesting, you know.
Right.
I mean, people call him the king of ghazals, who inspired Jagjit Singh and Mehdi Hasan Saab to enter the film industry.
Right.
They all came in as his admirers. They say that he's the only reason they became ghazal singers. So he was very open to experiments, you know. There's this ghazal of his in the 60s which would start with the Hawaiian guitar, move into the drums, and then he would start singing. So he was open to a lot of these experiments for his time.
So coming to experiments, and again, we've spoken about how he sang in 16 different languages, but he also was a performer who was equally popular in Pakistan.
Right.
And he is probably one of the, I don't know if he's the only one or one of the few who's gone and sung in
Right.
the Pakistani films there.
Yes.
And like we've already talked about the Frank Sinatra of India
yes.
for US citizens there. So tell a bit about the global music scene that he was also a part of.
Well, he was actually the first playback singer of India who started world tours.
Okay.
So he did his first world tour in 1956. And this was again in the peak of his career. And a lot of people were discouraging him at that time because they said, you know, if you leave the studio,
Right.
that vacuum will be filled in by another singer. So don't do that because when you're touring, you could be away for a few months. But he was confident about taking that music outside. So in 1956, he did his first world tour to East Africa, which was still under the British. So he did that in East Africa. Then he realized that there's a further demand from the Asian diaspora and the NRIs further into the US, the UK, and the West Indies and the Caribbean. So he explored all of this, you know. And when he started touring, his friends Mukesh ji and Lata Didi heard of the success and they started their world tours then later. And he kind of eventually built a route map for everyone else to follow. Okay, यहाँ पे demand है, यहाँ पे tickets sell होंगे, यहाँ पे और demand है. So he was like building a route map as he went for his other colleagues. And you mentioned Pakistan. Yes, we had family in Pakistan, of course, because every Indian Muslim family has gone through that partition with families separated and all. So his one of his brothers had moved to Pakistan and he had gone to visit him. It was a personal visit which turned into a professional visit as well because he had such a huge following there for his ghazals there. And it was the same in Bangladesh. He had a huge following for his Bengali songs there. So, but in Pakistan, he did one show in Karachi, which had a I think a record 150,000 attendance, and the gates were broken through and it was jammed. And Mehdi Hasan Saab, who was a very, very young singer at that time, but a complete die-hard fan of Talat Mahmood, he got pushed aside and he had to push for his seat to move in. And a lot is written about that as well, on what was the response.
Right.
And they wanted him to stay back. And Noor Jahan had called him up. He was just visiting Karachi and he couldn't go visit her in Lahore. And that would be the first time he would visit her after independence,
Right.
before she moved out. So Noor Jahan called him up and said कि बहुत आपकी डिमांड है, कराची में तो बहुत लोग दीवाने हो गए, आप यहीं पे रुक जाइए. So he said ये कैसा बेतुका सवाल है भाई, this is the 1960s और मैंने अपना decision 1947 में ले लिया कि मैं कहाँ रहना चाहता हूँ. नहीं, I'm sending you a blank check for 9 films. You please sign it up and stay back. He said, I'm overwhelmed by this offer, but please, I mean, you can't get your expectations up on this now. I've decided where I want to stay. And so that's how things were.
I don't think there can be any actual end to this conversation. If we had like more time, I think I'll have too many questions and I don't think it'll end ever. But this was, again, like I said, that sometimes when you look back in the golden era, I think we forget that it was its own world. It was a whole different world, which was actually beginning to expand. हमें लगता है आज की डेट पे हम expand कर रहे हैं. We use terms like global singer, pan-Indian, and we think like these tours are very new things that are happening. But there was a person back in the 60s, back in actually the 50s, because he started in 56, you said, who was doing it all. And he is actually, to be fair, the one who laid out that, Indian music, Indian singing could have and find the space in the global world. So in that way, he was really the torchbearer of Indian music, getting popular outside in the global space. Thank you, Sair, so much.
Thank you so much
for
Tina.
coming and talking so much. And I got to know on a personal level so many
Lovely
things about.
conversation, yeah.
Thank you for watching this. If you like this interview, do share and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.